Hi, welcome to this episode of the Thrive podcast. Today, I'd like to take you on a journey, more specifically, the journey of growth. What I've struggled with, and what I see a lot of people struggle with, is how we can find a balance in wanting to work towards something or wanting to change something about ourselves or in our lives, and at the same time being fully okay with who we are and what we have in the moment. I really hope you'll enjoy this one. It's been a major insight or learning for me that brought me much more lightness and peace of mind while still being ambitious and while still taking action. There might be a misconception out there that once we learn to become okay with who we are, with what we have, or with whatever happens to us, we might become passive or lose our drive for change or achievement. We might link this peace of mind or this mental state to being a monk somewhere in a monastery in the mountains that isn't in touch anymore with the real world that most of us live in, day out. My hope is that this episode will give you the insight and the tools to find this great balance between ambition, growth, and peace of mind. And to explain the topic, I'd like to take you through my marathon journey. A couple of months ago, I ran my second marathon. While it feels incredible to check off another goal, this time it wasn't just about the finish line. Instead of focusing on the achievement, I wanted to celebrate something far more meaningful, the journey itself. And of course, I'm proud of the achievement. It's rewarding and even a bit emotional. Achieving goals and celebrating successes are essential for behavior change and building self-confidence. But I also believe it's not where true fulfillment can be found. Running this marathon was more than a test of endurance. It was a path to becoming a new, stronger version of myself. Because along the way, I discovered that fulfillment comes from who we become in the process and how we learn to enjoy the journey. I know that for most of you, this information isn't anything new. Yet, most of us will be trapped in the disappointment loop when we don't get what we want, or we fall prey to fear of failure or fear of success that stops us in our tracks even before we start. There's real beauty to be found in balancing the desire to grow into a better version of ourselves with appreciating who we are right now, and I hope you'll find a bit more of that in the coming minutes. Let's explore how I found new strength through the journey. At 40, I'm probably fitter than I was at 30. And it's good to realize that without this marathon goal, I wouldn't have committed to consistent training or made supportive lifestyle changes like cutting out alcohol, sugar, and caffeine. The goal serves as both a guide and an accountability partner, helping me set a course toward the person I aspire to become. In this case, doing something that I didn't think was possible for me a couple of years ago, and hence exploring my untapped potential. Going through this process successfully, I've now become the person that can stick to a training plan, accomplish challenging goals, and believe in possibilities beyond my original expectations, which is a major self-confidence contributor. The growth and the comfort zone expansion are real. As I expanded my comfort zone, my concept of long distance, for example, has shifted. A couple of years ago, 10K was a really long run, both mentally and physically. Then it shifted to 20K, which now has become almost a weekly thing and isn't really challenging anymore, also both mentally and physically. Now that challenging mark for me has moved to 30K. For my cousin, who just did a 175K ultra trail in the mountains, a marathon now feels like peanuts. So, as you can hopefully see, it's all about perspective, gradual adjustments, gradual improvements, gradually becoming stronger and fitter, both physically and mentally. Not just by thinking about it, but by putting in the work and going out there. I think it's really a great metaphor for skill building and self-confidence. Your reality changes as you stretch yourself. Your perception of what is difficult and of who you are as a person shifts. That is growth. That is self-development. That is also proof of personality change throughout the journey. And if you really grasp this and you feel stuck in your life or you lack self-esteem or self-belief, it is a really powerful foundation to start from, knowing that you can change. Personality isn't permanent. Now, let's explore a bit more in detail how we can use goals for fulfillment and growth. And this is what I've learned over the years. Set result goals like running a marathon as a pull factor, as a milestone on your growth journey. but realize that it's only a small part of successful growth. The crucial next step is to make sure you translate result goals into clear process goals and habits, which provide you the ingredients for a new you. This means you have a clear plan of action and understand that habits are the gateway to real change. Doing small things on a consistent basis are the key to successful change. Yet, we oftentimes seek the big and fast changes and then feel demotivated after a while as it is too hard to execute. So, if you transform the definition of success from reaching the goal towards following your process and building habits along the way, you can also start tapping into the joy and pride of the journey. This is where the real change is going to happen. In the past, I mainly focused on achieving the goal. Now, I really see goals as tools for lifestyle transformation, shaping a new me. Goals are means to an end, not the end in themselves. Reaching them is a bonus. Not reaching them is okay too. And for me, this mindset is really liberating, putting the fun back into growth, even in the struggles. If you can learn to love the process and to not solely focus on the outcome, you can also fall in love with growing towards the person you'd like to be without fearing failure as much. Putting in the work is the success, no matter what you reach as an outcome. The funny or interesting thing I noticed when I talk, or when you talk in generally about a marathon goal with others, they usually ask about your time or your time goal or the pressure or the stresses that come with it, or they challenge you if it isn't too much and if it's healthy, or they project their own fear of failure or fear of defeat one would feel if they wouldn't finish it. So we seem to be hardwired to focus on the result, the stresses of working towards a goal or attempting to achieve something, and the risks and pain of failure. So if we want to unwire this, we gotta shift our focus. For this goal, I can proudly say the results really didn't matter for me, which made it also impossible to fail or experience failure. I've had this goal on the horizon in some shape or form since 2017 when I created my phone's background during my world travel. I realized somewhere in New Zealand how much I love the fun and the challenge of running in nature, and I planted a flag to make trail running a part of my life. And that's what brought me to a trail marathon last year and eventually to the second marathon a couple of months ago. I would like to end this episode with a bit of honest self-reflection. This last marathon was different than the first one. I set the goal in April last year, somewhat randomly, aiming to run a marathon on October 31st. Now, not finding an organized event for that day or week, I decided to run it solo. Again, the process of consistent training was put in place thanks to the goal, and because I had marked the goal down with commitment. But I didn't have an organized marathon to run it, but I ran it anyways thanks to that goal. The power of goals is real when you commit to it and are smart in how you approach it. But the experience of running it was different than last year's marathon. I had to tap more into my own motivation as there was no external accountability. There wasn't an organized marathon I subscribed to and paid for. I didn't have a friend that would tag along with me. And during the run, there were also no people that were cheering me on. It made me reflect in the morning of the marathon on why am I actually doing this? The weather was also grim and cold, a perfect reason for my mind to step into sabotaging mode. It would be quite easy to say I'll do it next week or in a couple of weeks when the weather is better, not disappointing anyone, of course, except myself. And while I wasn't giving into it, I realized that there is an external motivator present as well. I'm not only doing this for myself and my own growth, but also to be validated by others. I would be proud for myself if I ran it, and at the same time, I craved the recognition of others when I would run it. And I could look at this positively and just see that as an accountability element for myself, which it is. But if I'm honest, that reflection or realization showed me an area where I have work to do, meaning to feel at the core more okay with who I am. It is my self-worth, and to also not need the recognition or appreciation of others that much. More and more, I see that this is probably one of the most important goals for most humans, to start appreciating ourselves more for who we are and needing less validation from others. And as you know now, the true aim here isn't to reach the goal of not feeling the need for validation, but to start the journey and to move steadily toward more self-appreciation. I guess that when we accept ourselves more for who we are and are kind towards ourselves, it's easier to be kind, patient, and compassionate toward others and have less frustration and anger, etc. I also believe that this kind of journey brings higher levels of fulfillment and a positive impact on the people around us as we are growing more into our authentic selves. I guess it's also my ultimate motivation in life and work, or should I say, my ultimate goal. No attachments. Hey, I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode and that you, just like me, see that investing in yourself is an act of self-love and an extension, an act of love for others. Can we embrace who we are and at the same time commit to the journey to become a kinder, more confident, and more compassionate version of ourselves? Hop on this train with me and let's continue creating a positive ripple. Thank you so much for listening.